I think the logo on his hat is either sewn on crooked or the little tree is making it look crooked. Ugh. Anyway, hi, I'm Sandy, and we're going to pretend my hat looks just great. I am going to be painting today in watercolor, of course, because this is Sandy Paints. And I'm going to be painting in a style that I wished I could do when I first started watercolor. I just wanted to be able to splash paint on the paper and then do a couple of brush strokes, and the butterfly or the mountain would magically appear. I admire people who can do that with just big, beautiful, splashy washes and go wild. And I don't find that to be something that resonates inside with me. Last week, I also did a wild, kind of out of control, loose sort of painting, but with different kinds of marks and different kinds of washes that felt like me. I felt at home doing that one. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to watch that. This one, I just didn't feel like I was wearing my own sweater. You know, when you're trying to be someone else, you're trying to paint like someone else, it can feel very much like that. I decided to paint this particular reference because about 10 days ago, I did a colored pencil drawing of the same photo, and several people said, "Oh, how would you approach that in watercolor?" And I thought, "Oh, let me try this one in this loose and splashy style. That would be great." Now, you might look at this when it's completed and go, "Oh my goodness, I need that for my wall. It's beautiful." Or you might try to paint it this way yourself and be more successful than me. But if you've tried certain styles and you've tried following tutorials or taken classes, I've taken umpteen classes and work in-person workshops on this particular style, and it just doesn't sink in with me. It doesn't resonate with who I am as a painter. That might be the case for you too. There might be some things that we get to admire and we see them on our wall and we love them. And then we paint in the style that is our style. And that's what I'm trying to get more in touch with, is who am I as a painter? And doing last week's and this week's painting back to back really informed me a lot about my feelings while I was doing the painting. So we'll get into all that in just a minute, but I want to let you know something kind of special, that this month, March, is my birthday month. And I now celebrate my birthday by giving you gifts, because that's what I do since a very failed birthday a certain number of years ago, in that year that we all don't talk about anymore. The story is on Substack if you want to read it. But I like to give away things on my birthday month. And one of them is a free class that I started on this past Tuesday over on Sandy Draws. It's in two parts. The first one is already posted. The second one is coming this coming Tuesday. I also want to let you know that there's something for you watercolorists out there this weekend, and that is that all of my watercolor classes are on sale 15% off using coupon code WCBDAY. And you can use that coupon code all weekend long till, like, what was it, Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, because that's my bedtime. And go get yourself something. I can't wait to see you in one of my classes. There's going to be more coming up this month, so do not miss a video, because I'm going to be announcing stuff here on the channel, including a live stream coming up just for you later this month. But we'll get to that later. In the meantime, let's paint some awkward carrots. So I began by enlarging the sketch to a big size. This is a quarter page that I was painting this at. And I got rid of that butcher's block because it just didn't seem like it was going to be suitable for something that was going to be a wild, kind of splashy thing, to suddenly have a rectangle in the middle of it. I wet the paper and I was kind of throwing in some color, because some of the instructors, and everybody teaches differently, everybody's process is different, but some of them would have you wet the paper first and then just throw color on and let gravity take it. Other teachers would, say splatter stuff in, just different ways of doing things. There was one who said, just paint around the things that you need to remain white so that you save those whites, but everything else go crazy on. So I was trying to paint around the little strings that are going to be at the tops of the carrots. It's holding the carrots together. There's a little bow there. And so I was trying to be careful around that area and just let everything else go wild. Now, at this point, I could have thought, yeah, I just ruined this because I wasn't sure where this was headed. It was just feeling like I was wearing somebody else's sweater. Like I said, it's just a strange feeling that I'm I'm painting in a way that I don't know to paint. And I'm not saying that you should give up on a painting style that you're not good at before you've given it a good try. Because I've tried this for years and I go back to it once in a while just to see if I've learned any other skills that would then play into creating something like this. And apparently that's not the case for me. So, stuff happens. So, certainly give it a try. If you want to paint in a particular style, definitely do so. Um, and but like at some point you may come across a moment when you say, I think this is just not the way I paint. And it's not a failure of you. It's not that you're a terrible painter and you couldn't paint this way. Cause I don't feel like the fact that I don't do well at this style means I'm a bad painter. It just means that this is not my style. And if you can look at it like that, it frees you up to try things and say, okay, I'm going to wear somebody else's sweater for this one painting that I'm going to do. I'm going to do something like that. And then afterwards, I'm going to, put my own clothes back on and I'm going to paint like me again. So I was, a little bit of me, the control freak in me, wanted to paint the insides of the bows with the same color as I had painted the rest of that wash in. So I did stop to do that before drying everything completely. I was also working on Saunders Waterford, and Saunders Waterford tends to buckle from me more, and especially when I'm doing big wet washes like this. So that was a little bit of a problem, and that was why I was tilting the board so much to try to recover from that. But once it was dry, then I could start working on pulling those carrots back out of the mess that I had created with this crazy wild wash. I don't have an orange per se in my palette, so I used a watercolor stick just for this particular painting. Orange is just not a color that I seem to use very much. And there's other colors that I don't use very much, and I can always grab a stick to do that with. Just like some people have several palettes that they use. I'd rather keep one box of all of the sticks that I have and keep those handy rather than try to stack up a gajillion palettes because they don't stack very well, the ones that I have. So they just kind of stay in a drawer in the back, and I really just don't get them out very much. I got to figure out what to do with them at some point. Maybe I'll sell them at some point. That could be a good idea. Maybe I'll do a fundraiser and get rid of all my old palettes because I don't use them. Anyway, moving back to the carrots, I am, trying to mix up a color that's a part yellow and part that orange stick is a pyrrole orange. So it's a very strong and very staining color. And painting in the carrots while leaving some light in between them. So leaving some highlights on them and then in between. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do also with the surface that all of this was sitting on. Because once I start darkening the carrots, then I'm going to have this yellow wash. How's that going to look? And I really found myself gaming things out a lot more and critiquing the last step that I did over and over while I was painting. So I wasn't as much in the moment as I was thinking ahead and thinking behind, thinking about the things that I messed up and, you know, how I could recover from them, or if I was going to keep proceeding with this piece of paper, is there a way to save it? And the only thing I could bring myself back to reality with is to say, let's consider this one a practice. And maybe, after I do this one, I'll learn what it is that will make it work because I'll do all the things wrong in this one. And then I'll come back and paint it again and maybe do a better job of it. By the time I was all done, I decided I did not need to paint it again like this because that was just not going to be any fun because I didn't enjoy this. But this part felt a little bit more like me just because I was putting in my bounced light, which I talk about in the pencil video a lot, that sort of thing. But I didn't really, um, I just didn't really feel like I was resonating with what I was doing. The carrots were feeling very pale. which is fine for this stage. But I was actually nervous, which is weird. I was nervous about whether or not adding the purple to this was going to start working because I didn't do any tests ahead of time either. Sometimes a test on a scrap piece of paper will help to tell you that. I was using more of the orange because since I had pyrrole orange at my fingertips, I could really make this nice and bright if I added more of the pyrrole. But it did start to feel like, oh my gosh, now it's really, really orange. It, feels almost electric-ish with that strong staining orange. And what am I going to do with that? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to move on to the greens up there. And I started putting in more of the light green. And I just, mixed a light green out of the colors in my palette. If you want to try this, have at it. I'm sorry, I'm not giving you all the colors that I'm using, but it was just such a crazy cacophony of stuff here. I think that was Hooker's green, if I recall. Hooker's green I was using for the greens, and I had mixed it with Hansa yellow, I believe. I'm trying to remember. Trying to watch where I dipped into with my brush. But hopefully no one's going to try from this. Go find a tutorial on loosely painting carrots and follow that one because I'm not sure how helpful this one is. Aside from me telling you to pay attention to how you feel when you're painting. If it feels like you're trying to channel someone, even if you're trying to channel me, like don't do that. You want to be in the moment with your painting because if you're trying to be someone else and if you have it in your head that what would that person do, then you start losing how you use a brush, how you use your colors. If you're always thinking about what they do and what someone else would do. I felt a little bit better when I started using my inlaid liner brush. This one just does a lot of out of control things that help me to feel like I can control things like value. I can control the direction of some of the leaves here, but I can do it a little bit out of control because the tip of this brush just does its own thing. And it allows me to make these leaves of the carrots feel really crazy and out of control. And yet I can make some negative painting marks. I can paint around some of the really bright highlight stems that are in this cacophony of greens. And I just kind of kept proceeding thinking, okay, I'm prepared to throw this away after I get to the final, but I want to finish it first. So I have to, tell myself that this is all practice and rather than pull the tape off and throw it in the circular bin, I highly recommend finishing a painting even if you're finishing it and you know it's going to go in the garbage or recycle bin because you're going to learn something from it. And it's important if you're going to use especially a good piece of paper, then don't waste that piece of paper, that money that you've spent on it because you can learn something from it. I was here testing to see, okay, what would happen to all of this paint if I sprayed it and just let it run some more? Would that work? I didn't know if it was going to work. It was still not feeling like anything but a cartoon of a loose painting at this point because I wasn't seeing any realism happening. I was seeing shapes forming. I was seeing that, but I wasn't feeling it. It was just feeling way too much of a bright kind of painting, not in my normal colorways. It's why pyrrole orange is not in my palette. I don't have colors like that that are really, really strong that will take something over. So since I was still afraid of what to do for the shadows on the carrots, because I had used a blue violet in the colored pencil version, I was like, I'm just gonna mix a really dark version of this green. So I mixed, I believe, the hooker's green with some Paynes blue gray and started working in what felt like, again, a few minutes of me within this whole painting. It was just a little bit of me splashed in here trying to put in some of the negative drawing or negative painting details. And once I could kind of see the carrots separate, the tops of the carrots, and could see the leaves and stems forming in the top section, I started breathing a little bit easier and wondering, okay, maybe this is going to work out after all. I don't know. But I still treated it like an experiment and just said, okay, if even if there was something that I thought might not work well, let me try it and see. So I just kept, mixing different levels of a dark. Sometimes I'd put in more of the Paynes blue gray and pull out a leaf, just paint around one of the leaves and then drop it into some stems otherwise or in between some stems. Just trying to see what would work to make it look like it's all that cacophony of green because I've never painted that before. And a lot of people, look at my work and they're like, "Is there anything you can't paint?" Oh, yes, there's plenty of things I can't paint. I did not have any idea how to paint carrot leaves like this. Like, none of my paintings have this much focus on that kind of, I guess, detailed greens. I've painted plants, I've painted trees and things, but I don't know, there's just something about this that was very, very different. But if when you're choosing your subjects, if you always choose the same things you've always done, then you'll never learn anything new either. And I'm a big believer in that. It's one of the reasons you'll see all kinds of subject matter covered on this channel. Because even though I love painting certain subjects, it helps me to learn when I'm, trying to discover what do you have to do to make these greens look right versus what I normally do when I'm painting other things, other subjects, because I might be able to take some of these techniques into using that. So here's where I started going in darker with the carrots. And I used some of that orange and also mixed in some straight up purple, just Imperial Purple, and said, "Okay, we're doing it. We're doing the compliments just like we did in the other ones." And there were a few spots where I just like had to hold my breath because I was, using the purple a little bit by itself, but mostly in that mix with the orange. And then I had to really go dark. I had to see if this was really going to work. Now, orange and purple are not direct complements. Orange and blue are direct complements, but you can use split complements for shading as well. Now, I have found that I don't have any blues that I find work well with this pyrrole color in order to use it for a shadow color. So if I try to use blue in this, wouldn't really work for me because of the colors I have. But if I use a blue violet, which is right next to a blue, it's still going to work in the same way that complements work. So when I say complements, sometimes I do mean a split complement, but it's too confusing to explain it to people. But you can use a color that's next to the complement if you don't have one that will work. So, the more of this purplish color I was putting in, the more I've kind of like, okay, I guess it's working. But they still didn't feel like a realistic orange to me when I was working on this. And I thought, well, okay, whatever, let me see if I intensify this color in the outside because I wasn't getting the lights that I had left in there. I wasn't feeling like they were popping as white. I didn't really leave them as white, but I thought that pale orange color from the first wash, that yellow orange, should have worked as a white, but it didn't. It just didn't have that kind of contrast. So I said, okay, I'm going to intensify this color. And I just painted more straight up new Gamboge in that background. And I wanted to see if that would start making the white look white. And it does a little bit. I'm starting to see more of it. But then I had to like try to fade it out and make it look like that was part of the first wash. And this was where I was like, okay, I'm totally in foreign land now. I am totally screwing this up. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just throwing water on to try to soften edges. I'm going to have to do some splashing in order to make this look like it was done in that first pass because you should I found that it doesn't work. I shouldn't say you should never, but I found it doesn't work to add the splashy bits later nearly as well as it does if you can get them in that first wash. And the first wash is me. That's where I do my best work. And Perhaps if I tried this again, I could plan it better because now I know the places that I didn't enjoy. Once it was dry, I could then see that I needed a lot more contrast for the carrots to pop out against that bright yellow background. This, this is again one of those things where I was using colors that were not me. I was using things that were far too bright for me. And it was really difficult to see exactly how far could I push those shadows. And you can see I have a puddle of like really deep purple that I'm pulling from time to time here, and just using some real dark pigment. And if I had abandoned this earlier and then tried to repaint it and gotten to this stage, I would have still had to do this fight with the purple to see, is this going to work? And I might have been more nervous if I got all those greens to work out on the second try at the painting if I hadn't gone through all of this in the first place. So I learned a ton from this, one of which was needing to get darker with my colors sooner. And it's something that I struggle with in all my paintings. Like if I could get darker with some of my marks early on, I would have less brush strokes in order to get to that level where everything was feeling dimensional. But this affirmed the same problem. So I guess that part is still me doing the painting. You can really see that they're looking like more realistic carrots, but they're much fussier than I wanted them to be. In a style like this, it felt like they should be looser the way the greens are looser. And I couldn't quite figure out how to get my inlaid liner brush to do any of that work because I don't have enough control with it. So I was trying to use a smaller brush to get the same thing done. But next up was trying to paint in a little bit more dark background color in a few spots so that little dish of greens would kind of have a little bit more in between it, and then a bit more on the inside here so that I could have those whites pop on that string. But of course, my brush went over where it should have gone. So now I was losing that lovely little white bow that I had tried at the very beginning to save. So, yay for uh, screwing that up at the last minute, right? After I had bothered to reserve all that white. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to leave all that and go back up and add a little bit more to the greens. At first, I wondered if I should just leave all of that just kind of amorphous green up there and only have detail in one section of it because I didn't want everything to have the same level of detail. Since I had all that splashy loose background on the bottom right, I wanted splashy loose on the left as well, but I couldn't really figure out exactly how far the detail in the greens should go. So I just kind of started and knowing that this could be a scrapped painting by the time I'm all done, and then decided, okay, it at least needs some splatters. Maybe that will help it. Sometimes it's a cheater for me to try to make myself feel like I've done something loose. And sometimes it really is just part of what I do when I'm painting trees. A lot of times I do some splattering in tree areas that I don't want to paint in every branch, but I want it to feel fussy, like there's a lot going on there. And for this, I wanted some areas to feel like there was a little bit more loose stuff going on. But then we get to this last part, and I'm going to go back to my series on things I wish I had known when I first started painting. But this is a things I wish I had not known when I started, because I saw a video early on when I was doing my painting from one painter who said they never reserve their whites of the paper. They just use gouache all the time. And I wanted some of these highlights on the carrots to pop a little bit more. And I needed to fix that bow anyway. So I thought, since I'm going to have some of this gouache on there, let's see what that might end up looking like. And by the time it was done, it just didn't feel natural to have those gouache highlights on there. There's just something about painting the gouache in. It's got a different kind of paint characteristic because it's an opaque paint. And I was trying to make it look dry brushy. I didn't succeed all that well. And I guess overall, as I said, I'm not unhappy with the end results of this painting. It's just not one that feels like me. There were just enough places in here that I was trying to channel someone else. And had I tried to paint this more realistically, I might well have been more satisfied by the time I was done. My goal is, I don't have uh, unlimited years ahead of me. When you're looking at your birthday, you're always feeling about how old you are, and I don't have 5 decades ahead of me to paint. So I don't have that many years to go. I want to paint things that I want to paint, and I want to paint them like me. So that's one of my goals, is to learn more about who I am as a painter and what makes me me. That brings me to the comment section for this week. I would love to know, what is your style? If you already have it dialed in and you can explain it, please do so. I would love to hear what is in your heart about what you paint and how you paint it. But if you're somebody like me who still is looking for what your style is, what is your jam, then tell me about a time when you were painting where you felt like you were you and you were painting the way you were meant to paint. Like, I can tell the difference between this carrot painting and the abstract from last week. I could tell from the inside, even though it didn't necessarily show on the paper, perhaps, but I could feel what that feeling was like, and I want more of that. And I'm betting you probably do too. I will see you again next Saturday. Don't forget to head over to art-classes.com and pick yourself up a class, because I would love to see you in one of my classes. I'd love to learn from you while you learn from me. And I will see you again next week. Take care. Bye.